governments, international organizations, and the private sector. Dr. Omole is the Director General of the Institute for Police and Security Policy Research, where he leads initiatives that foster collaboration between law enforcement, the military, security practitioners, academia, and the private sector across Africa. His expertise is recognized globally as a consultant and rostered expert for the United Nations and the United Nations Development Program on institutional transformation, law and order, and security sector reform. He has also served as National Security and Intelligence Reform Advisor to the Speaker of Nigeria's Federal House of Representatives in the ninth session of the National Assembly. Please welcome once again to the platform, Dr. Charles Omole.
Thank you. Please, you may be seated. Thank you very much. When Pastor Poju told me about today's event, you know, Pastor Poju is very clever. He allowed you to say yes to come in before telling you the topic. So I'd already said yes, and then much later the topic came. But the first thing I did was that I remember I was going to Europe at that time, so I downloaded quite a few on YouTube, previous editions of platform. And I was surprised, well, not surprised, reminded of the various brilliant submissions by different speakers in time past. So I asked myself, what else is left there to say that has not been said? I also asked myself, you know, what have we done as a nation with those past brilliant solutions? So that quickly took me to what I want to talk about today. I want to be an outlier today. I don't want to be sector specific. I just want to talk in a philosophical sense and frame some philosophical challenge for all of us as a nation. But before I start, I want to tell you 4 quick stories. Those stories resonate with you as I speak later. The first story, a particular lawmaker felt that the hospital in his local government did not have any scanner. In fact, hospitals in 3 local government areas, actually there was no scanner. So he contributed to refurbish the hospital and then purchase a scanner for them to give to customers for free, to use for free. About 6 weeks later, someone called his office that the scanner had broken down. So the lawmaker called the supplier and said, I thought this was a new machine. He said, yes. So they went to check, they fixed it. It started working again. 3 months later, it was called again that the machine had broken down again. So this time around, he sent a team to investigate. And they came back to him that the machine was being deliberately sabotaged by the staff of the hospital because they had local private scanning centers that they were sending patients to. And they were being given a particular amount for every patient they send. So since that scanner for free was installed, they lost money. So they kept sabotaging the free scanner, and then during that period, direct people back to those private centers. That's the first story. I'll join it up later. Just bear that in mind. Second story the government felt that we need some infrastructure in the country. So there is a rail, there is a third Niger bridge that was built. And for those of you who are not aware, within 3 months of the third Niger bridge being opened, the metal railings started going missing. So people went there to sabotage it. Bear that story in mind. Story number 2. Third story. While I was working with the National Assembly, there was a particular lawmaker I met. I'm being deliberately vague here because it's still in the National Assembly. We were talking one day and he said, he said, Doctor, I said, yeah. He said, do you notice that many of the longest serving lawmakers in the National Assembly are from the North? I said, I have not done the research. He said, yes, most of them are from the North. I said, why is that? He said, you see, the problem with you Southerners is, he said there are too many educated and qualified people in your constituency. So after you've done one term, 10 people are already queuing up to tell you, get out of the way, it's my turn. He said, but in my own area, I'm the only graduate and I love it that way. So imagine giving that lawmaker the job of reviving education in his community. Now, I've said these 4 stories to exemplify the problem called Nigeria. For every problem we face as a nation, there are 2 solutions, two activities that work together. And I need you to write those 2 words down. One is what I call the technical solution. Second is what I call the adaptive solution. So the title of my exposition this morning is The Adaptive Challenge to Unlocking National Potential. The adaptive challenge to unlocking national potential. You see, technical changes or challenges are things that tend in the construct of a nation that mainly government is responsible for. So the hospital needs a scanner. What is the technical solution? I can't hear you. Good. The country doesn't have rail infrastructure. What's the technical solution? Country is lacking in bridges that link cities together. What's the technical solution? Now, you can see here, those are technical solutions. And a lot of the submissions over the years on this platform have provided a lot of such technical solutions. But for a nation like Nigeria, there is a bigger problem. And that is what I call the adaptive challenge. And that's what I want to focus on today. If by any chance I can't finish my notes, I will put it up on my Twitter handle at Dr. C. Omole for you to download free, because I don't see how I can finish it looking at the time. But let's proceed. Adaptive challenge. Adaptive challenge deals with how we mentally interact with a technical solution that has been provided. And today I'm going to be talking about the 10 toxic mindsets that I've seen in Nigeria that means that no technical solution will work until those mindsets are changed. In fact, one of the stories I didn't tell you, right? I did say 4 stories, right? How many did I tell you? You see, you are not paying attention. The 4th story, because I was about saying something that I was going to link to the 4th story. The 4th story was, there's a country in Africa called Kenya. So they changed their constitution many years ago. And because of massive corruption, they decided to change the electoral system so that everything, including transmission, is electronic. And the idea was that with electronic transmission, there will be no more electoral malpractices. Guess what? The second term presidential election of Uhuru Kenyatta was nullified by the Supreme Court for malpractices. And if you read through the legal documents, one of the things that stood out for me was that the chairman of their IEBC, that's the equivalent of an INEC, his login was used over 100 times across the country in different cities to log into the computer system. So, you created a technical solution called electronic transmission, but the adaptive change has not occurred. So the same people who are bent on rigged election are in charge of the electronic system. So what is happening is we are providing lots of technical solutions in Nigeria, but until our mindset as a people change, no technical solution will work. So when many of you go around talking about, oh, we need electronic transmission of result, I laugh. There are countries that have it, and elections is still rigged. Back in the United Kingdom, we voted, when I was living there, we voted with pencil and paper. Not even biro. Pencil and paper. Which means people with the right adaptive mindset will make any system work. People with wrong adaptive mindset will frustrate every system. And that is the problem we face in Nigeria. Adaptive changes are difficult to come by. And I think that is the challenge we face as a country. Every country have implemented changes at different times. There are countries that introduced compulsory wearing of seatbelt. People rebelled against it to start with, but they engaged in a certain program that changed the mindset of the people, and now people wear seatbelt. There are countries that made drinking of alcohol above a particular level and driving an offense. Of course, people rebel against it, but there were adaptive programs put together by the government. People now see drinking and driving as a wrong thing. They didn't see that before. So the challenge here is this. Technical problems are more about finding a solution, whereas adaptive challenges are about changing the way we think, the way we work, the way we address and interact with those technical solutions. You see, Nigeria, we face a particular unique challenge. 61% of our population today were not born before 1999. We have a massive population who never lived under the military. You call them Gen Z. And many of them, of course, believe they're always right. That the older people don't know anything. Oh, you old people, you are the one that caused the problem of our country. Well, before you throw stones at the old people, let me throw my own stone first. You know, at the Declaration of Independence in the United States, we called some people the founding what? Founding fathers. Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, James Monroe, Aaron Burr, Thomas Jefferson, these are all founding fathers. But at the Declaration of Independence, which of course later on they wrote the Constitution, but at the Declaration of Independence, do you know something about them that many people don't realize? Alexander Hamilton was 21 years old. James Madison was 25 years old. James Monroe was 18 years old. Aaron Burr was 20 years old. I can go. These were the founding fathers that birthed a new nation. You Gen Z, what are you birthing? I need to challenge our young people to understand that people younger than you have been foundations of forming a new nation. But what are young people specializing in? But the old people, I'm coming for you next. So, talking about technical solutions, there are lots we can learn from different nations of the world. In fact, the beauty of being in a developing nation at this time is the fact that we don't have to reinvent the wheel across many areas. Things that took people 50 years, we can do it in 5 days because the solutions are already there. So when you hear some people say, after all, it took America so many 100 years to achieve, so we should repeat the same thing? So the issue here is this. Technically, we need to diversify our economy. We can learn lessons from, say, UAE, that diversified its economy beyond oil. We need to strengthen good governance and fight corruption. Of course, good lesson from Singapore on that. We need to invest in human capital development. Lessons from South Korea, with emphasis on education and skill development. We need to improve our infrastructure. Well, a very good example is China that improved its infrastructure. We need to promote political stability. Rwanda is a very good example in Africa of a country that achieved that. We need to leverage on technology and innovation. Estonia is a very good example where 100% of government services can be interacted and obtained online. You don't need to physically go anywhere. We need to strengthen our healthcare and social welfare. Cuba is a very good country in terms of healthcare. We need to embrace industrialization and local manufacturing. Of course, after the war, Germany was a very good example of that. We need to improve ease of doing business. Well, we need to learn from New Zealand on that. We need to focus on renewable energy and sustainability. Denmark is a very good example. We need to build strong regional and international partnership. Well, the European Union is an example of that. So I've just run through all that to say we are not short of technical solutions to our problem as a country. Now I want to focus on my thesis for today, the adaptive solutions and challenges. The biggest problem and hindrances to unlocking the potential of Nigeria are less technical, but more adaptive. So, what are the toxic mindsets that seems to have stifled the development of this nation? What are the toxic mindsets that means if we don't change those mindsets, it doesn't matter the innovation government bring, it doesn't matter the technical solution we deliver, we will not unleash our potential as a nation. Number one, complacency. Development stagnates when citizens become content with status quo and do not strive for improvement or innovation. This is exemplified by accepting poor standard rather than pushing for improvement. Nigeria is a nation of people who are complacent, massively. Some of these mindset I will skip, some I would address in greater detail. Second mindset, entitlement mentality. Entitlement mentality, a mindset in which individuals believe the government or others owe them support without personally being responsible or contributing anything. This discourages initiative and self-reliance. The amnesty program is an example, and the palliative culture in Nigeria is an example. People are entitled. You should speak to people who are from, say, Niger Delta, the way they talk about oil. You see, there are things in this country that I don't think we are ready for certain honest conversation yet. You know, in the Niger Delta, they blame a lot of things on the oil companies. Yes, they have their own culpability. But on a first-hand basis, I have documents, I've seen documents, where oil companies will earmark, I'm talking of years past, we earmark money for local amenities. The moment they bring any outsider as a contractor to deliver that local amenity, the local people will say no. They will sabotage it. So they will get a local chief or a local person and give that person the contract. They won't do it. And yet, it's the oil company that's at fault. Am I saying they have no culpability? Yes, they do. You know how much money they pay to the government that is not used for local development? How much they pay locally that is never used? All I'm simply saying is this. A lot of people who claim to have been fighting for Niger Delta are people who have enriched themselves personally. Look at all of them. All the so-called militant leaders. They're all multimillionaires now. When they were fighting for our people. When they make money, it's my money. So it's time we all wake up and understand that we need to change this entitlement mentality. The third mentality, resistance to change. Resistance to change. Nigeria is a nation where people just want to do things the way they've always done it. The fact that it doesn't work is irrelevant. You know, they are resistant to change. They must do it the same way their forefathers do it. You know, you've heard the story of the woman that wanted to cook a chicken and has a big microwave or oven at home and started breaking the leg of the chicken, broke the chicken to smaller bits before putting it inside the microwave or oven. So the young daughter looking at her said, "Mom, why are you breaking the legs of the chicken before cooking it?" The woman said, "That's the way I saw my mom do it." Luckily, the grandmother was alive. So the young girl went to meet the grandmother and said, "Grandma, this is what mom did. Why do you break the leg of the chicken before cooking it?" The grandmother said, "That's how I saw my mom do it." Luckily for the girl, the great-grandmother was alive. So she went to the great-grandmother and asked the same question. Then the great-grandmother said, "Oh, before the war, the oven we had was very tiny. The chicken couldn't fit into the oven hole. So we had to break it into pieces so that it can fit into the small oven. Now there's a big microwave that's still breaking the leg of the chicken." Talking about resistance to, exactly. It's important that a lot of people in Nigeria are like that. And this resistance to change, the institution that embodies this the most in Nigeria today is the civil service. Well, the civil service in this country is a major stumbling block. And only those, you see, if you don't interact with them, you wouldn't understand what I'm saying. While I was working in the National Assembly, I remember after I came and I was onboarded, their tiny salary they were paying, the first salary I was paid was 6 months later. That's the first salary. So I said, what took them 6 months? Apparently, the onboarding process meant your file have to go to different departments. And the file had to go to those departments, paper file. So if you want to find out the status of your process, you have to call every department. You have to look for your file. Everything was done manually. Let me tell you one more thing. The salaries then was paid. When I mean then, we're talking of night assembly. We're not talking of 50 years ago here. The salary every month was paid by the staff taking cash to the bank every month. Okay, for those of you who have account with GT, they will carry cash in Ghana must go to GT to pay your salaries. It's things you can do by transferring. They thrive in obscurity, and opacity is their key word. They make simple things complicated. Resistance to change. We are not moving ahead if we don't reform these institutions. The fourth toxic mindset, corruption tolerance. Corruption tolerance. I think it's so bad in Nigeria now that if you are not corrupt, you look like a fool. You know, in fact, you are the exception. That's how bad it is. People now just expect it. And when I mean corruption tolerance, don't just look at politicians alone. You are the security guard in a bank or anywhere. In fact, in places in Abuja, if you go out, unless you're able to tip those security guards, there's no parking space for you. And those are private establishments. Corruption tolerance. Number 5, lack of civic engagement. Lack of civic engagement. Now, this is slightly better, especially with the Gen Zs. It's a lot better. They're more engaged in the polity than they used to be. So that's an excellent point for the young people. But civic engagement also means there has to be a bit more civility to our engagement. You see, if you go online, sometime when I want to look for trouble, I say some things online. And those of you follow me, you know they come for me all the time. I'm not bothered. Because if you disagree with my point, we can engage. But what do you see? Look at his coconut head. And he called himself a doctor. You know, there is abuse galore. That's what many of our young people know. Such that the issue at hand, nobody is talking about it. Is it right? Is it wrong? What's your view? They have no view. They just want to vent and abuse you as though you are the president. You know, I remember when the minimum wage thing was going on and Labour was asking for almost 700 and something thousand. I said, look, this thing cannot be more than between 50 and 70. Otherwise, the economy will suffer. Come, I trended for 3 days. Come and see the abuse. Rather than engage to ask me what data am I basing that prediction on? And eventually what I predicted happened. But all they were just doing was abuse. You are the problem of Nigeria. You see, the one that makes me, that's very funny is that sometimes when I see some of those very bad abuses, I just out of curiosity, I go and check the profile of the person. He has 3 followers. So I'm telling myself, you know, So I don't even bother responding with your 3 followers, So these are the young people that are supposed to be learning. Find out why you thinking this way. No, it's abuse. Abuse galore. And many of you online, you know that. They do that a lot. And the moment you resort to that, you disengage from discussion. You disengage from discussion. Lack of civic engagement. Number 6, the 6th toxic mindset. Colonial mentality. Always preferring values and goods from foreign countries. Our import culture in Nigeria is largely due to colonial mentality. But this colonial mentality is more ingrained than you think. A few years back, I met a friend who just started a business. And within 6 months of starting that business, he told me one big contract in Nigeria. So I said, tell me the magic now. 6 months, even people who have been in the business for 5 years, they're still looking for such contract. Do you know somebody? He said, no. So what did you do? He was living in England then. So he said, this is what he did. He set up his company, used some contact to bid for the contract. So he was shortlisted to among 10 companies to come and make a presentation. He said, so he looked at his neighbor. He lived in a place called Hertfordshire outside London. So he looked at his neighbor, he's a good friend. He said, do you want a holiday to Africa? That one said, yes. He said, okay, come with me. He said, I'm going to give you a free holiday to Nigeria. You follow me everywhere I go, but don't say a word. The neighbor, who is a taxi driver, said, who doesn't like a better thing? So he flew him to Nigeria, said, put him in an hotel, all that. So every presentation he went to make, and on the day he went to defend the bid, he took him along, introduced him as his partner. And the guy was just smiling throughout the meeting. Because technically, he doesn't know what he's there for. So by the time they finished, he got a call that he won. He said, he asked, what did you prefer? He said, Oga said, that one that has the expatriate, that's the one we want. Colonial, exactly. So anytime you see a white man with a business, a Nigerian presenting business, query the white man. Make sure he's able to talk. For all you know, it could be his neighbor. But the point I'm making is, Nigerians prefer things that are not Nigerian, even though inferior to Nigerian. There are terms, for example, that colonial mentality have made almost a crime. For example, if I tell you somebody is an herbalist, what comes to your mind? Aha, you see yourself? Is your pharmacist not an herbalist? No, it's true. I grew up with my grandparents, and my grandfather, I've not seen that illness that you will have. That he will go into the bush. He knows what bark of tree, what leaf, everything to boil together. I've not seen that malaria. It will clear. If drinking it doesn't clear it, it will make you bath with it. Those of you old enough know what I'm talking about. All your sweat, you are sweating of malaria, and no Western medication. Those are herbalists. But because of colonial mentality, you will ignore that is easy and free. And you are complaining that a tablet is now 50,000 naira per tablet, when you could easily get it for free. Colonial. Number 7, sectarian or tribal loyalties. Sectarian or tribal loyalties. This is a particularly big problem. We have people who believe it must be their person, regardless of the competence. I was telling somebody yesterday, I said, if a disease called the H disease, there's no such disease, I'm just using that for illustration. If there's a disease called the H disease was found in the Niger Delta today, and government set up an agency to eradicate that disease, I say if the top 5 experts in the world, H disease are northerners, the Niger Delta people, many of them will still prefer their local person to head their agency, even though he knows nothing about the disease, than to bring a northerner who's the number 1 expert. Why? Tribal and sectarian loyalties. That's what Nigeria has become. Where when somebody is appointed to a post, it's not, let's check his pedigree. Is he competent to do it? The first thing is, which state is he from? How are we ever going to develop like that? When we don't use our best brains, but we're now using people that we know. You see, the irony of it all is this. This is the irony. Go and check all the people who have been presidents of Nigeria. There's no correlation between you being a president and your locality developing. There's no correlation at all. Go and check. Most of you remember the road to Abeokuta after Obasanjo finished 8 years as president. It was a terrible road. So what am I saying? Go to Otoke after Jonathan finished. So this idea that my own person must be the president or must be in this position regardless of whether he's competent or not, is a toxic mentality that we need to change. Number 8, short-term focus. Short-term focus. Many years back, I was at a seminar and I met somebody who was then on the Nigerian Sovereign Wealth Fund. And he was talking about how they have 2, 3 or whatever $billion, in the account uninvested. So I asked him, I said, why are you having all this money uninvested? He said the problem is the government told them that they must only invest in something that will bring return within 4 years, so that the return will happen while I'm in government. You have sovereign wealth fund in countries investing in 30-year projects, 40-year projects. We are too short-term in our focus and mentality as a people. Even in our planning, it's the same thing. Short-term focus. You see one government start something, the next government will come and reverse it. Is that not what's got us into trouble with the Ogun State government? When one government signed a contract, the next one came and, regardless of the merit, canceled the contract. Now Nigeria is in trouble for it. We can't continue like this. Number 9, quickly, mediocrity mentality, mediocrity acceptance. You know, we are really in trouble when people begin to applaud governors for paying salaries. That is the height of mediocrity. Are they not supposed to pay people who have worked for them? And governors now put paying salary on time as part of their achievement. And we are accepting it. Number 10, because of time, environmental negligence. Now, this is not about the green lobby or about pro or anti-climate change. What I'm saying is this about that environmental negligence. Regardless of whether you believe human activity is causing climate change or not, it's irrelevant. We all accept that climate is changing. Therefore, we need to do something about it. And many Nigerians are not bothered about that. So what are the solutions? For that, you will have to go to my Twitter handle because I have 12 solutions and I have 2 minutes left. So I'm not going to go into that. But the entire 15-page note will be uploaded this afternoon, and you can download it there for free. But to close, this is what I want to say. I've said that Nigeria is not short of technical solutions. Both past programs and even today, they will give you a lot of technical solutions. The problem we have is what? Our mindset. We've not adapted our mindset towards development. We've not adapted our mindset toward positivity. But this is the problem. Who are responsible for this? The old people. But you know what? The young people have now been indoctrinated in the same toxic mindset. So the disease that afflicted the old is now within you. And that is the challenge we face. You cannot solve a problem with the same mentality that created it. If we say these toxic mindsets are mindsets of our adults, ask yourself as a young person, are you afflicted by those same mindsets? How have you improved on your own mindset? But I will say this, the solution starts with leadership. The leadership have to exemplify what it is they want the young people to learn. When you see my 12 solutions, you will see that the number one there is about leadership, about government. So I'm not absolving them of it at all. I'm merely saying we are all in this together. So there are lots of technical solutions for problems of Nigeria, but more importantly, for Nigeria to move forward, for us to achieve our potential as a nation, we all need to change our mindset and adapt our thinking towards development and prosperity of the nation. Thank you for your time.